This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everyone. This is Lisa Stoll, the WCCC Librarian, and
it's Rose Lynch, the coordinator of the Instructional Support Center, also known as the ISC.
so we're here to present for you today Netiquette, Professional and Academic Communication. And this is really about how to communicate specifically in an online environment while we're doing a lot of classes online right now, but it's also for just general information about how to communicate professionally. And we're going to cover both online communication and phone conversation. So generally, netiquette refers to the rules about the way to properly and politely communicate with other people when you're using the internet. It's as simple as that. That's netiquette. Etiquette is how you do it in person. Netiquette is how you do it on the net. And there are a couple of basic rules for online communication that are part of netiquette. The first one is to be aware of your tone. So that is, how does what you're writing sound? How could it sound to somebody else? Is it serious? Is it joking? How do you take it? Because you have to realize that when you are in an online communication, so if you're emailing somebody on a discussion board question, that kind of a thing, the problem is that the person who's on the other end of that communication can't see you. They can't read your body language. So you have to make sure that your tone is kind of neutral, that you're not trying to be sarcastic and joking. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that you're kind of trying to be neutral, and that allows your tone to be more academic. So it's the way that your email sounds if you were to read it out loud. Also, no yelling, please. So I think most people who have communicated online at all know that if you put something in all caps, it's considered yelling online. And if you do that through an email or a discussion board or any other kind of communication, what you're telling the person on the other end is that you're mad or you're yelling about something. So some people do it by accident, not realizing that maybe their cap lock is on or they're trying to emphasize something. But again, keep in mind, the person on the other end of that communication can't see you. So if you're maybe doing it in a joking manner or being sarcastic, you probably want to stay away from that when you're communicating like with your professors or staff members at the college, or even with your fellow students in discussion board and things like that. So again, be careful with humor and sarcasm. And this all relates, everything, is the fact that when you're communicating online, again, you don't know what the other person's body language is or what their facial expression is. So you can't necessarily tell if somebody's trying to be funny or they're being sarcastic, and that can come off as rude and offensive. Make sure you read through everything. So this works in two ways. First, when you send a communication, so a discussion board post or an email, when you're posting something or emailing something, make sure you read through everything that you've written prior to hitting post or send. Okay, because it's very important that you've read over everything and that you've tried to make sure that everything you're writing could make sense to the person on the other end. Additionally, if you're reading somebody else's online communication, make sure you read through their entire communication before you respond. Because I'll have a lot of people who I'll send an email to, and they only respond to part of the email, not the entire thing. And what I think when that happens is that they didn't even bother to read my entire email or my entire communication. So just keep that in mind. Read everything before you respond. Grammar and spelling count, and this is true not only in the academic world, but in the professional world. How you spell things and using proper capitalizations, things like that, it matters and it counts. And when you're doing discussion boards, if you're emailing a professor or a staff member at the college, your grammar and spelling absolutely represent you. So to show that you're serious about something and that you're taking it seriously, you need to make sure you take the time to read everything and see that your grammar is correct and that your spelling is correct. Almost everything online can be spell checked. So if spelling is a weak point for you, one suggestion I have is maybe write your email and or your discussion board post in Word, and that way it can help you catch some of your spelling and grammar mistakes and fix those then, and then copy and paste that into the body of an email or into the discussion board post. That way you can double check your grammar and spelling.
Lisa, can I just, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just, a thought had occurred to me regarding the discussion board posts.
Yes.
The system does time itself out. So if you're a person who takes an especially long time, such as myself, to compose whatever response that you wanted to include, it's best to write up your response for a discussion board on a Word document or something that you copy and paste into that, so that you don't get timed out and then you spend 2 hours coming up with a response for something, and and automatically it kind of disappears. So just
so that's one thing to keep in mind. In My Warren, you don't want to write your actual discussion board post in the discussion board section. You want to write it in Word and then copy and paste it into the discussion board. Also, I recommend you save your discussion boards when you write them in Word. That way you can always go back if a professor tries to say, well, you didn't reply to this. You can be like, yes, I did. Because the thing is when you're using things like My Warren and that kind of interface, things can get lost, things can get deleted by mistake. So it's always good if you back up all of your work. And Rose is absolutely right. It does time out. I've had that happen to me where it's timed out in the middle of typing something and then you lose everything because it doesn't save as you go. So just keep that in mind. So finally, be kind and professional, because again, remember, on the other end of your communication, whatever that communication is another living being. Another person is at the other end of that. You're not typing something into the cloud. You're not typing something into the ether. It's there being sent to another person. So be kind and be professional in how you address your emails, how you approach your discussion boards, because that's going to matter for the person at the other end. So we're going to talk about how to email your professors, and not just your professors, but any staff member at the college. So this is what you want to do if you want to make a good impression and not annoy them. So this is the example of a good email, and it aligns with what is on the left or the right-hand side, which is what you should include in your email. So the subject line of your email, if you're writing to either a professor or a staff member at the college, should be an indication of what's going to be in the rest of your email. So it should be informative in the subject line. If you're writing to a professor, it's a good idea to include your class and section number, and then some kind of statement about what your question is about, because the person you're writing to, the individual faculty member, might have 4 or 5 different sections of the same class. So right away, when a professor sees this, they know, okay, this is a student from my Psych 101 W2 class. All right, section is W2. And this student has a question about sources. So that helps prepare the professor to know, what it is they're looking at, and they can place maybe your name into the right section. And that's really helpful for them in organizing their thoughts. So then you want to have a formal kind of introduction. Dear Dr. Harrison, dear Professor Harrison, something along those lines. And you want to be concise. So you don't want to ramble on and on and on. You want something that's concise, to the point, ask your question, and gives the reader enough information to be able to interpret your question. So this email starts with, hi, this is Clarissa Jones from your Psych 101 W2 class. So you want to identify yourself, and that means including your entire name, okay? Because if there's more than one Clarissa in that class, that can be confusing for the professor or whoever's reading the email. And so you want to make sure you include your whole name, and again, it doesn't hurt to reiterate which class you're in. It then says, I have a question about our sources for this week's assignment. From reading through the syllabus and the information for our assignment, I know that we need to cite our sources. Do we also need to cite the class textbook if we use it? Okay, so it's very concise and to the point. There's a little bit of background information. The student is acknowledging that they've read the syllabus. And so that's another important thing. When you're talking to your professors especially, they don't want you to ask them questions that the answers are already readily available to you. If you read through your syllabus completely, if you read through your class notes completely, if you read through the announcements completely, then it will give you a lot of information. It might answer your question. They don't want you to give them a question that's available in those kind of areas, because their thought process is you should have already read that material. All right, but if it's not clear, like it is for Clarissa here, she wasn't sure if she needed to cite her textbook. All right, and that's a very good question. Some professors might require you to cite your textbook if you use it as a source. Other professors might not. So then the student concludes with, I would appreciate any help you could give me on this. Thank you in advance. Sincerely, again, being formal, you can say sincerely, thank you, take care, whatever, and then sign the email. And that's something I get contacted by a lot of students, and a lot of them, again, will only give me a first name. Their question won't be actually clear, so all I have to ask them a lot of follow-up questions in my email before I can really get to the heart of what the problem is. And they don't give me a last name, and that's important to me because I want to know who I'm communicating with, and so do your professors. So a couple of other things is you want to avoid slang. Don't curse in your email. Oops, sorry about that. Use standard spelling. So don't use like the kind of online spelling you would use in text or on Facebook. So it's, you want to spell out you, Y-O-U, and not you, R, not R, two or two, not the number two, your, not your, right, not right, I, not lowercase I. So it's important that you capitalize the first word of a sentence and any title or proper noun. So you're using the letter I to indicate yourself, you have to capitalize that, okay? And that's really important. And we get used to it, especially I think in text messages, of just not doing that. Some phones will autocorrect, some phones autocorrect, but not all the time. That mine's like that. It like autocorrects some of the I's, but not all the I's. So I always find that confusing. But just make sure. And again, when you read through it before you send it, you can correct those kinds of things. And if you're in Word, it will correct it for you. So this is the right way to send an email. This is an example of a good email. Now let's look at a couple of examples of what you should not do when you're emailing your professor, unless you really, really, really want to annoy them. Now these examples are real examples. They come from Professor Jess Bacho, who is one of our professors at WCCC, and she was kind enough to share these examples of emails that she got from students over her over her time at the college. So let's look at the first one. Example 1, B. Also, this paper, it might suck. That is okay, yes? Did you read the analysis yet? It's cool. H. So I'm hoping that from looking at the example of a good email and then looking at this, you can see how it's not really an appropriate nor professional email to send to a professor or even a faculty or staff member at the college. Okay, grammar stinks. I just can't go into everything that stinks. There's no identification of who the student is. So what if Professor Bacho has like 4 or 5 classes, and she might have a dozen people whose name starts with H, or it might be the beginning of a nickname. You just never know. So this is just, a great and horrible example of what not to do. Example 2. Oh, this is my favorite. So, hey, Jesse, it's XX from your XX class. So the student was kind enough to identify who they were and what class they were in. But that's when it starts to go downhill from there. Well, I was planning on going to class today, even though the weather was bad, but my car took a shit in the parking lot of the Washington Diner. My alternator belt broke and I lost all power. I was stuck in the snow for about an hour and a half. I had to have a friend pick me up, and I left my car at the XX Diner because I had no jumper cables like an asshole. I was soaking wet and freezing, so I just gave up on the day and went home to change, and I'm making the decision to stay home. I'm not even going back to work because T roads in Washington are so bad, and trees are falling left and right, ha ha. So yeah, that's my horrible story for the day, and that's why I wasn't in class today. Laugh out loud, see you Thursday. Where to begin on this email? Number 1, it goes into a lot more detail than anybody needs to go to. If you're emailing your professor because you missed class, just say, hey, Professor so-and-so. Well, don't say hey. You should say, hi, Professor so-and-so. I'm really sorry I missed class today. I had car problems. So I decided to stay home. But I will see you at the next class. And the reason for sending an email like that is, first, you're letting the professor know that you value their time. okay? Because they take the time to come up and are ready for classes when they're there, whether it's in an online environment or an in-person environment. And they've taken the time and they're prepared and they've done all their work for that class. And when students don't show up, sometimes, you know, that can be hurtful, believe it or not, because they've taken the time to be there and the students haven't. So if you miss class, it's a great idea to email your professor. And you don't have to go into horrific detail like this one does. You shouldn't talk about your car taking a shit anywhere. Just say you're having car problems and, you know, say, you know, I will be in your next class. And that just lets the professor know, hey, I respect you enough to let you know what's going on in my life and why I miss class. But it doesn't have to be these kinds of details. And you should definitely try to spell things right. Which is funny because this student, I assume it's a he, but this student was able to spell alternator belt, but couldn't spell soaken and T, which is the, and couldn't spell trees. I mean, it's just really ironic. So it tells you that the person had the ability to spell and they just chose not to. Again, a good idea to read through your emails. So we're just going to rip that example up. 3, dear Professor Baccio, that is a great opening. I will not be in class today because I'm sick. If there's anything I should know, just email me. See you on Wednesday. All right, so the problem with here again, grammar, all right, spelling. And the other thing that will most likely really piss your professor off is when you tell them to send you what you missed. In college, your professors are not responsible for helping you make up work you missed in class. You should always make an acquaintance in the class and exchange like numbers and be able to text each other, say, hey, I'm not going to be in class. Could you share your notes with me in the next class? Something like that. But don't ask your professor to give you what you missed in class. The nice thing about high school is when you were sick, you know, your teachers would give you a nice little packet of the stuff you missed and tell you what you need to do. Your mom would go pick it up. It doesn't work that way in college. So you are responsible for any classes you miss or any time that you miss and making up any assignments you might miss. So just keep that in your mind. Example 4, yo, I'll be late for class today, okay? All right, no introduction, no idea which class, no idea who's gonna be late to class, but there you have it. Yeah, keep this in your memory when you go to write an email that that's absolutely not the way to do it. And finally, 5, I'm really going to try to make it to class tomorrow, but right now my stomach is very upset and I have diarrhea. And it's not because my work is not done. So again, too much information is going on here, really. And the other thing is that when the student says, and it's not because my work is not done, you want to bet that their work probably was not done and that there was probably something due on that class. And this is the day before the classes even come up. So this person is anticipating that they're not going to get their work done. They're going to use the most, you know, disgusting kind of excuse they can to emphasize the direness of their situation, because really they probably didn't get their work done. So we can read between the lines when people send something like this, okay? And we know the tricks of the trade. So just keep in mind, too much information, and the student is definitely protesting too much a day early that their work is done. So now Rose is going to talk to you about phone etiquette.
Hi guys, I just wanted to reiterate the fact that phone etiquette also matters and it's important. You don't want to create unnecessary scavenger hunts for the staff members, your professors, or anybody in a professional situation. Here's a voicemail message that I've received in the past at the Instructional Support Center. Hey, I got to cancel my appointment. Okay, bye. That doesn't tell me a whole lot. We've got multiple people on our scheduling calendar. I don't know whether they're canceling for that day or someday in the future. And again, I then have to go back and figure out who, you know, what the telephone number was that the call came in under, and then I have to do a lot of backtracking, and it takes up an awful lot of time. So please don't leave folks guessing as to what it is you're trying to do and who you are. So it's important to, when leaving a voicemail message, to speak slowly and clearly so that people, as they're jotting down their messages for the day, they can actually you know, jot down your name and not have to second guess.
Sorry, we're having connectivity issues. You're going in and out.
Okay. Also, like Lisa was talking about with the emails, it's important to use proper greetings when you're communicating with a voicemail as well, by saying hello, good morning, hi, as opposed to hey, yo. You'll also want us to make sure that you identify yourself and indicate what it is, why you're calling. If I'm returning someone's call, I indicate, hi, I'm Rose Lynch. I'm calling, returning your call to help you schedule a tutoring appointment. Please give me a call back when you get a chance. And then I would leave my telephone number. So it's important to include necessary details such as dates or times, if appropriate. And also, you want to make sure that you provide accurate contact information. Oftentimes, more often than I would expect, when I'm returning a call to a student, sometimes their voicemail boxes haven't been set up yet, or I'm getting a message that their voicemail box is full, so I can't communicate with them. So also, when you're indicating your callback number, make sure that you also include your area code when leaving your phone number. Oftentimes, you know, that we have a 908 area code here in Washington, but a lot of cell phone numbers are coming from out of the area, so, or were established elsewhere. So a lot of folks have out of area phone area codes. So keep that in mind as well. I also recommend that you revisit your voicemail greeting that's on your phone. One of my personal pet peeves is when I'm calling somebody and they're recording their voicemail greeting, basically pretends that they're answering the phone, and then they'll pretend that they can't hear you, and I'm raising my voice so they can hear me, and come to find out that, you know, I'll hear the beep and it's not a real message, and then I know it just throws me off. I'm very easily thrown off by that. So I strongly suggest that you revisit your voicemail greeting and make sure, you know, it's one thing if the only people that are calling you are your friends and they get a kick out of it. Somebody that is very limited on time, or, you know, they're not going to appreciate the humor in that. So, and also think about, you know, if you're a potential employer, if you applied for a job and somebody is reaching out to you for a more serious reason, again, it's a tone that's set that won't necessarily be in your favor. So
it is not very professional, that is for sure.
And while we're on that topic, I'll share with you the fact that, well, I would recommend also that you visit your email address. A lot of times people will have some wonky ones. My son, when he was in high school, it was something along the lines of smelly fruitcake 123 at Hotmail, something like that.
I love that.
So,
Smelly fruitcake.
And again, you know, if you're communicating with your friends, which again, well, back when he was in high school, that's, you know, there wasn't as many cell phones around, I guess. So anyhow, just again, you might want to spruce it up a little bit to be something more professional, indicating your name and at gmail.com or whatever, to kind of eliminate that that unprofessional atmosphere. The other thing is, and obviously since we're all kind of working in this remote environment currently, it's still important to be mindful of cell phone use and expectations and restrictions for in-class instruction. Some of you folks are actually doing this as well. So you want to make sure that you're checking your course syllabus to see what's allowable from the professors, and just be cognizant of that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rose.
Yep.
So let's talk about, why is all this important? Why are we telling you all this information when you've been communicating since the day you were born? Well, it's because the way you communicate with the other students and your professors can lead to something more. All right. So the reason you need to be professional in your communications at this level is, one, it's an indicator of your seriousness and professionalism. So one of the things you might find out is that there might come a time where you need a letter of recommendation from one of your professors or from a staff member. Maybe you're applying for a scholarship and you want somebody like Rose or I to write you a recommendation letter for the scholarship. I've done that several times. Or maybe you're applying for a job and you really need a letter of recommendation from a professor. If you're indicating to us that you're serious about your academic goals and you have that level of professionalism in your communication, that's going to go a long way into those students that we say yes to. So it also determines how you and your professor and other students view you. So again, do they see you as the class clown? Do they see you as a serious person who really is trying to work hard to do well in school so that you can go on to bigger or better things? You keep in mind your professor evaluates you based on how you communicate. Now, if you are in an in-class situation, this would be true as well, because how you participate in class, how you communicate with your professor, that is really important. And your professor, whether you like it or not, is always evaluating that. And participation is part of your final grade in most every class. So right now, if you're in the online environment, your participation is through discussion boards, but it also includes any emails you send to your professor. And you need to make sure that those emails are professional and that you're communicating correctly, because they're going to evaluate that in their whole process of evaluating you as a student. And keep in mind, your words reflect you and your attitude. So if you're not taking your online communication seriously, if you're not following the rules of Netiquette, if you're not following the telephone etiquette rules, what that reflects to us is that you're not taking this seriously and you don't respect us or the work we're doing either. And that can be really hard. So keep in mind that there are reasons for this. There are reasons that this exists. There are reasons that this is important, and it can serve you very well in your future if you're going to go into the professional world. These are lessons you should learn now and not once you're there. Finally, if you have any questions, you can always email us. My email and Rose's email are both at the bottom of the page. Feel free to email us with any questions about this or anything else that you might have questions about. Or if you want to try out your email or telephone etiquette skills, feel free to send us an email or call us. Our numbers can be found on the WCCC website. So I have this list of extra resources. If you're watching this video on YouTube, it's in the notes section under the video, and it gives you just resources that will go even more in depth into what we're talking about. Some of them will sound a lot like what I'm saying because these are just the general rules overall, but they can help you if you're concerned or you want to look up more information. Thank you very much for watching our presentation, and we hope you are having a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.